Good afternoon or good evening or both. Our guest today is Eve Breckenridge from St. Helena, and I asked her to bring her smallest canvas, and she did, and here it is in front of us. It's untitled, and we're going to have this as a backdrop for the show. Eve, thanks for coming. Tell us about this first, and then we'll get into your life and art.
Well, I don't know about getting into my life, but this is an early painting from maybe 10 years ago. It's one of my least layered paintings, as you'll see as we move forward. And I like it because of the movement, starting with the earth and the greens and going around to the blue in the sky up at the top, and the red takes you around. My granddaughter says it looks like fish in a green lake to her, but I do not title them usually because every time I look at them, it's a new experience for me instead of a static one.
Mm-hmm. Choosing the size of the canvas, how did you say this is what I needed?
I like working big. A few years ago, I did do some smaller pieces, which we'll see later on. But the only way I got myself to work small was working with a teacher for a little while, and that's what we all did, was 12 by 12s. But I love the freedom and the fear at the same time of approaching a giant canvas and then going, oh my God, will I be able to do it this time?
And do you know where to start? As you said, with the base?
No idea.
Okay.
Many times I paint over a painting layer after layer after layer. And it's all an unknown process of discovery for me.
Would this have been painted totally indoors?
No, I always paint outside.
Okay.
I always paint outside.
At a particular time of day?
No, in the winter I tend to go out in the morning after my coffee and I just start working because it's not too hot to stay out there very long.
Yeah.
Because I live in St. Helena, I paint in St. Helena. In the summer I do paint, but the paint dries really fast, so it's hard to work with it.
Are you St. Helena by birth, or?
No. I raised my kids in Calistoga for 35 years and moved to St. Helena to live in a place called Vineyard Valley, which I adore. And I have sold many of my paintings to my neighbors now, which I love. So I've been in St. Helena about 15 plus years now.
All right. And you are a landscape designer.
I am. That's what by education, I have a master's in psychology. I found out plants were a lot easier to deal with than people.
Okay.
And so I wound up, all the jobs I had, including working at the vet's home in Yountville, I wound up gardening with the people that I was helping. I got a job in another place that I was doing painting and plumbing, and I wound up gardening. And then I went to Meadowood, and then I had, as an independent contractor, went to Harvest Inn, and now I just do my own private clients.
Do you remember working with somebody at Harvest Inn? Do you remember the builder at all?
No, that was long after it was built. This would have been in the late 80s, 90s, yeah.
Because he made every home individual with his brickwork.
Oh, those places are amazing inside, and
he eventually died of melanoma because of the sun exposure.
Oh, did
but he was a wonderful man.
It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah. How long were you at Meadowood?
Meadowood about 10 years, and then I did Harvest Inn for about 6 years, and then they sold it.
Right.
And that's a longer, complicated story, but I did get to use the grounds to get married at, and got one of the rooms with the fireplaces you were just talking about. Yeah. And I loved it. I had my office there. I worked out of there. It was a great place to work.
But now you're working in an Eden. I mean, all the homes are individual, all the landscape is individual, and you found your final home, or your next to final home.
Yeah. No, it's the people in the community where I live are such an asset. They really are. we support each other through all of the things that have been going on.
Yeah.
You know, we've got fires now, and we've got COVID now.
And you've got a refugee right now you're taking care of.
I do.
Yeah.
And his cat.
And his cat from Angwin. Yeah.
I just posted on Facebook, and somebody showed up.
That's wonderful. Yeah. We're going to see a lot of your art, and you're going to comment on it as we go through it, and you feel free to comment as Justin shows us your art.
So this is a painting that I did to enter a show called Naked Vine. And I painted this. This one is titled Walk to the Library. And behind my house, you walk to the St. Helena Library. And this is the vines in the late fall. And so Naked Vine Show, I won honorable mention. And this is a group that'll show up of these 12 by 12 paintings. Not titled, but you know, I would call it Starry Night or Full Moon, or I love this. And this is, I love things with an Asian influence. And this particular photograph doesn't show the red stripe at the top of this. There's a very thin red stripe. But it just feels Asian to me. And I love the movement in this. Just the blues and the reds together.
These are mainly oils?
These are all acrylic. I only work in acrylic.
I gotcha.
And you can see the butterfly metamorphosing. I love those red stripes coming down, grounding the sun and the kind of burned out landscape. Yeah. And I paint a lot of trees. Right across from me, where I live, across the path, are birch trees, so I'm fascinated with their bark.
Yeah.
And another set of birch trees. I just sold this set to a woman, Kathy McDonald, who just moved from Vineyard Valley to Napa. Another set of birch trees.
Yeah.
Now this particular one I sold to a girlfriend also in Vineyard Valley, and it's out on her deck in her garden. And it fits with her deck out there.
They look like giraffe legs.
Now, and this is a darker set. This is sitting on my easel at home. There's a lot of reflective gold in this. I'd done the whole background and wasn't happy with it as an abstract. And I went, let's just put some trees in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I went to a Gerhard Richter show many years ago at the Getty. And I read that he painted with squeegees. And most of my trees are done using squeegees as dotting the paint along the squeegee and moving it across.
Interesting. And there's your workbench just below that we see in the painting there. That's it, all bespeckled. So I like this very much.
A different type of tree. This was hiking up to Lake Hennessy. And when the sun is behind the trees, the front of the trees, the bark looks black.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated. And if you had a closer exposure, you'd see the dry grasses and the old little flowers and the trees in the distant. And I was the first, this was okay, I'm just going to try this. And I was very happy with it.
I think you're successful. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Tony. This does not show the depth of it very well in the lighting that I had for it outside. This is many, many layers that have been painted on, sanded off, painted on, sanded off, hosed off, this doesn't quite show the movement in here with the gestures, and it has some silver paint. A lot of my friends think the top looks like the Golden Gate Bridge going across the ocean. So it would be just layers starting with the earth and going up to the sky.
Yeah, yep.
Last summer, I was feeding chickens up the hill going up towards Lake Hennessy. And when I went there, the hills were so green.
Yeah.
Just so green. It was amazing. So I just got saturated with this, I gotta paint green hills. And so this was a painting I did, just like, oh, that green is just amazing. And I had a little piece of plastic. Well, we're on to the next one. This is, some people think it's a waterfall with the trees. Again, this is one that I've sold to a person in Vineyard Valley. I see it as a reflecting pond of the seasons. You kind of see the winter and you can see the spring reflected as well. But that the water is almost pulls you in. The waterfall and the translucence of the reflective pond at the bottom and the sky reflecting back down. This was again done with squeegees.
And another large canvas too.
Very large canvas. And at some point I just went, that's it, I'm in love with it. And when my client bought it, she looked at another one as well, and I kind of pushed her towards this one because it was one of my favorites.
Yeah. And when you say I like it, it's done.
It's done.
Done.
It's done, yeah. And I started out as in landscaping, as we started talking about earlier. So this is a house that I did in St. Helena. We took out the concrete sidewalk and put in the flagstone and filled it with roses. It just shows what you can do with the front of a yard that just had a little concrete sidewalk going up to a tract house. And this is Nancy and Paul Pelosi's house on Zinfandel Lane that I was the landscaper for many, many years. Another view of their gardens, which I was really attached to those gardens.
Oh, bet.
And this is my garden, and that's Kuan Yin. I adore Asian inspiration, and there's a little fountain down on the ground there that makes the sounds. And every morning I get up and I look out my window with my coffee, and it's the joy of my life to have a place that I can feel that. This was another little garden I did all with purples and whites. Probably many years ago. I was just looking through old slides.
So you've got color in the garden and color in your paints. So back and forth. So the two work together.
The two work together, and what's interesting is that lately the paintings I've sold to go in the gardens of my clients outside. And so the two worlds have started coming together. And sometimes I'm painting, sometimes I'm making jewelry, I do glass work, but at the age of 75, I am thrilled with the turn my life has taken to include my friends and their appreciation of my art and my place in their life and their place in my life, and this kind of new environment where we're supposed to distance. How do we bridge that distance? And art really can bridge distance, and gardens can bridge distance. And the organics of that coming together, I'm thrilled.
Acrylic is good for you because it's not, the weather is not going to deteriorate it or change it outside.
Absolutely. I can wash it off with a garden hose.
I think Churchill turned to painting later in life. He did bricklaying earlier on. But
amongst other things,
But painting was later, and he
I'd
really
like
enjoyed
to say that I'm following
Sure.
the same path
That's
as
it.
Churchill.
You just need a cigar. That's all. Once in a while, a cigar.
Once we're done.
Once we're done, okay. All right.
The champagne and the cigar.
Champagne and cigar later on.
When I turned 70, I was scrolling through Facebook one day, as some people are wont to do, and just being frustrated with, oh, if you love your mother, repost this. If you had cancer, you know, not that I don't appreciate it, but it's just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And somebody had posted, what is a dream that you've given up on? And I just scroll through. And about 10 minutes later, I thought, is there a dream I've given up on? And I went, Peace Corps. 1965 at Berkeley, I wanted to join the Peace Corps. And I got rejected. I didn't know you had to be a college graduate to apply.
Okay.
And that's still true today, unless you're a beekeeper or something that is a skill they've got to have. So I thought, well, what is here domestically rather than going to a foreign country? So I looked up Job Corps, things like that. I was too old. Looked up Peace Corps, no age limit. They sent me to Madagascar to teach sustainable agriculture, which I am trained in. I'm a master gardener.
Yeah.
I was in the first master gardener class for Napa County. So right here in Napa. So I went to Madagascar, prepared for no electricity, no running water. It was cold in the highlands, believe it or not. And I did teach agriculture. I taught farming, I taught rice farming, I taught composting. But if we'll see the slide, I wound up collecting trash on the side of the road because I can't live without art. I can't.
Found art.
So I started collecting cracker wrappers, feathers, whatever I could find. And I started making mobiles and different objects. And the kids would come by my house all the time, and I had paper and pens for them. And they came by one day, and they saw me using glue and cracker wrappers and scissors.
Yeah.
And they said, "What are you doing?" Well, my Malagasy was very limited. And so I said, this is bad trash and this is good trash. The art's the good trash. The box over here is bad trash I collected. So they went home, came back the next day with about 15 kids. And I go, oh, the pencils and the pens, they're all in there. You can go draw. They said, no, we want to do bad trash, good trash. So we went out collecting trash, and they delighted in doing art.
Yeah.
And at the end of my service, it's 2.5 years. Not an easy road. You cry a lot.
Yeah.
You wonder what in the hell you're doing there when you've got a family at home who's missing you. And I realized that it was hard to teach the parents to think out of the box. But I taught those children to think out of the box because they would have never used trash for art. So if he's got that slide of the...
He will, yeah. But we used to call that found art.
Yes.
You'd go out and find something, and you would just say, there it is. It's original found art. And the fact that you separated sustainable from non-sustainable, from good trash and bad trash was, I mean, I think you told me that it's the 5th poorest country in the world, or fifth poorest country
I think
in
the
the
third
world.
poorest country in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
And that's out of 200 countries, and you are in Madagascar.
Yes, and the people were just an incredible experience to be with. When I left, the most powerful thing to me when I left the country was I had no idea. I knew I'd impacted the children. But the adults were, my language skills, I had a hard time learning the language, really hard time. And normally they give you a party when you leave, and I wanted to give the party because I wanted to honor everyone that had made my service possible.
Yeah.
And so I brought in a translator so that I could actually tell them in more than 10 words what it meant that they had been in my life. So I went around the room, and I think I'm done, and they stop me, and they go, now it's our turn. And they go around the room saying what I meant to them and how I touched them.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And words that I would say, I'm hardworking. I mean, I'm persevering. I never quit. But they were using words like, you were so kind. And so we often don't have a picture of who we are to other people in the world. And so that was their gift to me, to reflect back things that I would have been unwilling to take to myself.
Yeah.
So for that, I'm really, really grateful.
But I like a dream that you gave up on. You didn't give up on it. They didn't hire you in the first place. You didn't give up on it, but they forced it on you, and then you made it happen. You made it happen and come back. Yeah.
And I'm so grateful, because I think often as we age, we start to wonder, you know, is this it? Am I going to have any other big ambition?
Yep.
I watch people, because I live in an over 55 community, I watch sometimes people's lives get smaller and smaller. And I felt that's what I was doing. I wasn't just grabbing at life.
Yeah, yeah.
And so for that, all the tears were worth it.
Sure they were. Did they give you a choice of countries?
To some extent, but they really wanted me to, they wanted to put me into their school garden program, because I'd built school gardens. I built a school garden in Calistoga.
Okay.
And so there's not, the average age in Peace Corps is 23. I was by far the oldest in Madagascar.
Yeah.
I was older than most of the people in Madagascar. I think 56, 58 is the life expectancy.
Sure. You know, years ago, Cousteau gave up on Madagascar. He just says it's a country that's dead because they've chopped down all the trees. And there's nothing left. And he says, you know, it's dead. I can't, and that's for
getting
him.
to see the parts of the rainforest, which I did in one place, and the lemurs up in the trees. Yeah. And literally slogging through the rain and the mud was one of the most incredible. When I give presentations on Madagascar, I'll say, there are no lemurs. And people go, oh, so at the very end.
No dodos either.
No, I would show them lemurs at the very end. So they go, oh, it's the lemurs.
But here you are in a community, and you're here, and your neighbor over here was in the Peace Corps, and your neighbor over here was born in Mauritius, which is just next door to Madagascar. And this is a little global village all in Vineyard Valley.
It is. It's amazing, the talent and the perspectives and how it's brought people together. And I'm hoping that we find ways to really utilize that and encourage each other to keep building our lives. And putting ourselves out there into the bigger world. Because what people have there shouldn't be confined there. So it's just like you doing this and bringing people out into a wider audience that get to say, I mean, in the Peace Corps, it was really hard for the young people to understand what I was bringing to the palate sometimes.
Well, a couple of days ago, I walked by a lady, and I was told that she does interior design or decorating in Atherton. And I said, that's a long way from here. But I think her name was Laura, but it was a question that Laurel. And I said, Vineyard Valley to Atherton is just two separate worlds, and yet those two worlds are one world for her.
They are. They are.
So it's not as though you're stuck in Vineyard Valley. You can go wherever you want, and it's not as though you haven't had a life before Vineyard Valley, you want a life to continue while you're at Vineyard Valley.
Well, the refugee, which we started with, lives in Angwin now. He came here from Michigan. He's describing this house he built that's a musical house. And you can play music that he built it for a man that was blind.
Yeah.
And so you can play music around the house by stepping on things or strumming.
Who knew?
Two worlds
Sure.
coming together.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking about my art. He's talking about his art. Who knew? Because of Facebook,
Yeah.
we would be in the same house with my daughter, also a refugee from Carmel Valley, got evacuated.
Yeah.
And it's just connections, you know?
Yeah.
You just walked by my house one day with Polly.
I know. I just walked by and suddenly I said, all right, we can do a show. And it was just like that. And
Yeah.
so we've made Polly our agent for another gentleman, Tom
Yeah,
Grimm,
yes.
who will do a show early in next year. And it's just like fishing in a great pond, I'll tell you, or a
Yeah.
great art. I just said, wow, look at that fish. It's not catch and release. It's not quite catch and release, but it's just saying, that's a show, that's a show, that's a show.
Yeah.
And that's a life. You know, that's a life that people should know more about.
Yes.
Because it's encouraging, which I hope all
Yes.
of our viewers get to. And I don't know what happened to our Madagascar slides that Justin's going to get to if I'm calling him out. Didn't we have 4 slides on Madagascar,
Just
Justin?
one, I think.
One, just one? And we're saving it. I'm putting him on the spot, but I hope we don't conclude without seeing it. And he's going to
I almost brought it in with me.
he's going to find it one way or the other. No, so it's encouraging for people that they're not shut-ins. They're not shut-ins. They've got a life. They've got a beautiful life. And forget pandemic. Pandemic doesn't shut in your life totally.
No.
People treat it as anti-social distancing. It's not social distancing, it's anti-social, and we're proving that it doesn't have to happen. And you proved it by going around the world and doing that.
Yeah. No, we don't have to. Social distancing, I think we all need to be careful. I felt like we had a pretty safe bubble in Vineyard Valley, for one thing. So that's truly been a blessing.
Yeah.
And this is my first trip to Napa.
Since
March. May.
Yeah.
March.
May.
March.
Yeah.
March. Since March. Haven't been to Napa.
Yeah.
So grocery shopping every 2 weeks. So yes, I'm careful.
Yeah.
But I work in my little bubble, and I'm happy, and I can paint all I want.
Well, I'm happy I can see you twice a week at least. So, how can people reach you? I think under your name, Justin has how to reach you. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you came to Napa. I'm glad people in the outside world will see you at 8 o'clock every Friday night in September. And bless you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
It's been delightful.